Fan.
Welcome. It is a Monday, 9 to noon style, Monday in the neighborhood. And the neighborhood is the 651 Carpets Plus studios at FM 100.3 KFAN. I'm Paul Allen. Eric Nordquist produces. And as many know, over the weekend, there was a 3-car accident in Maryland, and it proved fatal for Minnesota Vikings rookie corner Khyree Jackson, who is now dead at the age of 24. Now, I got the news Saturday morning as I was sitting with my son, Derek, who's 23, and we both shook our heads without saying anything. A 24-year-old young man has died, and there's just nothing to say. Alcohol reportedly was involved when some lady went zinging across a Maryland highway, leading to a 3-car crash, and all 3 in Khyree Jackson's car died. The perp and her crew in the Infinity all lived. So did the guy driving the Impala. Now, I never met Khyree Jackson, the rookie corner from Oregon, while he was here, fleeting as it ever will be. But Alec Lewis of The Athletic did, and met his mother and former football coaches of Khyree Jackson. And Alec joins us now. Alec, good morning. Paul Allen, what's going on?
Morning, PA. Thanks for having me. Hope you're good. Obviously, enjoy our conversations. Wish this one was coming on amid better circumstances. Pretty brutal. Like you, was pretty devastated Saturday morning. Just didn't really know a ton of how to respond to a dude that young with so much promise. That happening. So no, I appreciate you having me.
No problem. And at The Athletic, Alec wrote a feature on Khyree Jackson a couple of months ago, and his path to the NFL was anything but easy, and now he's gone. So, for those who may have missed that, when it comes to the mercurial and or circumnavigation of a way to a professional career, what do you recall?
Yeah, I mean, I'll just say, it started because the day Khyree was drafted was day 3 of the draft, 4th round, and I had heard about this guy from Viking staffers in the lead up to the draft, both prior to the first round and also the day before day 3, and them drafting him in the 4th round. One of the Vikings coaches said, this is our guy if he falls to us. They had watched him at the Senior Bowl. Durante Jones, who's from Maryland and has ties in that area, had met with Khyree, and they really hit it off. And so once he got drafted, he did as all the draft picks do, they do a 15-minute media session over Zoom or video with the media, and he was. You don't. I just say, in a media role, you don't expect a ton from those calls. They've never met the media. They don't. They're usually kind of just so overwhelmed. And he spoke for 15 minutes, and it was one of the most engaging. One of the most. You couldn't help but just feel like this dude was so. Just the charisma. I just came away with this guy is going to be really awesome to follow. And the days after that call, I thought it would be interesting as I was just doing my reporting to just talk to people around him. And I ended up, like you said, I talked to his mother, Ebony, for about an hour and 15 minutes. And I was going through that conversation this morning. And one of the first things she said, I remember asking her about the emotional and all. She was just I'm just so proud of what Khyree navigated to get to that point. He attended 3 junior colleges. after the first trip to Arizona Western, he decided that he was probably going to be done playing football. He returned home. He was kind of homesick, got a bunch of different jobs, ultimately worked at a grocery store. And his mom was, at that time, she's like, I'm glad he found something that he's committed to every day. And then some conversations with coaches led him back to wanting to play football again. He went to Kansas, played for Fort Scott Community College. Then he went to East Mississippi. And there he had become like one of the top elite junior college cornerbacks in the country. Alabama found him. They recruited him. He played there for 2 years and then finished at Oregon with Dan Lanning, which obviously earned him the fourth-round pick. So just an unbelievable arc, and really to navigate 3 junior colleges, which are not easy life experiences, and then play for as high level of football as he did and be able to get drafted. I mean, you could just hear it in his mother's voice of how much she appreciated like his willingness to chart his own story. And that's what she would always tell Khyree, like, this is your story and it's not going to be perfect, but like, if you're doing what you love, then it's beautiful. So yeah, it's just that all of that has gone through my head in days since, and you just feel for the entire family and the families of the other 2 men who lost their lives in the
Amen. Amen. Have you texted or chatted with his mother, Ebony?
I sent her a message yesterday morning, just about how much I'm praying for them and thinking of them. And she hearted it over text. It's one of those, I was thinking about this too Saturday, as you know, PA, it's like I'm young and these situations you just don't want to have to handle. But when they happen, it's like, you want to be such a human of like, this is a family grieving the loss of their 24-year-old kid. And it's unfathomable, but it's also like, how do you also have the job to do in some capacity. So I wanted to give a little space and wanted her to know, just because, I mean, there are conversations in this job, like I said, that just stick with you. And the one with his mom about her son's past and how she felt about it just did for me.
Now, when with Khyree Jackson, and we're discussing the death of 24-year-old Khyree Jackson. It transpired on Friday evening in Maryland. The world learned about it Saturday morning. Alec Lewis wrote a very comprehensive and awesome feature right after the draft on Khyree Jackson. And you mentioned his mother Ebony, and in reading the story, there clearly was a time for this young man right around, I think it was 2019, when he went to Fort Scott Community College. And, for whatever the reason, something didn't click, man. And he sat out more than a year, he was away from football for like a couple of years. And I recall from that story, because I reread it over the weekend, his mom was imploring him to either get back to school and try to establish some type of career or go get a job. And when he worked multiple jobs, at one of them, he ended up being Employee of the Month. And she, as a wonderful, loving mom, at least what I felt from the story, that accolade for her boy just was it made her super proud, and it made him feel really good too. So it seems like Ebony and her son Khyree were very close, weren't they?
They were, and his father Raymond. I mean, he was also very just involved. I mean, Ebony told me that when Khyree first drove out to Arizona Western, which was his first of the 5 colleges, that they took a family trip to San Diego and then drove together from San Diego with Kyree's father Raymond. And she told me the story of like, we're driving from San Diego to Arizona Western. It's as much of a desert as possible. She's like, I saw a tumbleweed. I didn't know that actually existed in real life. And I mean, I believe the quote that she gave me was like, he's 17 years old. He had not really been far away from home. I kind of just worried about leaving him so far away. And so you're exactly right, PA. The interesting thing is, so once he returns home from Arizona Western and ultimately, like you said, like he gets the job, he worked at Chipotle, he worked at Six Flags, then he worked at the grocery store Harris Teeter. She did not know, his mother did not know at the time that he was doing work on his own to contact coaches because he felt that football love again. Like there had been something, maybe just missing the game, maybe just a realization of how talented he really was, that kind of spurred him to email some coaches, and connections led him to Fort Scott, which he had never played cornerback before that time. So this is like his third college season essentially, and he spotted Joey Thomas, who was a former NFL cornerback, working with the cornerbacks. He's like, that guy looks awesome. I want to work with that guy. Joey Thomas, the former NFL cornerback who was the cornerbacks coach at Fort Scott, told me that he was really skeptical. And Khyree comes over at 6'4", 195 pounds, and he moves like a 5'10" cornerback, his hips swiveling perfectly. And he's like, this guy, I want to work with this guy because I see something in him. And then to, again, get to the point at which he goes to East Mississippi and then is on a Zoom with his family with Nick Saban, who, from what I mean, the conversations around Alabama that I had after the draft, like really thought this guy could be as elite of a cornerback as they've had. And they've had some really, really good ones. Like there was one coach on that staff who compared him to Dre Kirkpatrick, who was a really long, really athletic, longtime NFL cornerback. They all saw that in him. And I mean, that's like part of it was, I mean, I remember his mother saying like to have him working with a coach in Durante from Maryland with Brian Flores, who they really respected in an environment that I know the family was looking forward to Khyree being in. It just gnaws at you, really.
Absolutely. And Alec, terrific piece that you did and working off of that, just kind of with his mother telling the story of where he was, that layoff period, and then working his way back. I don't know how much he ever communicated it to you, but I'm sure you've seen it where the other two in the vehicle, Isaiah Hazel and Anthony Litton, they also passed away as part of this. And Anthony, I believe, I don't know about Isaiah's career, but Anthony actually played at Florida State, Penn State as a defensive back as well. Shortly after the draft, I saw a video where he was talking about this layoff period, and it wasn't just his mom and his dad, but he had close friends, high school teammates. I'm not trying to exactly put that, make that connection specifically to either of these other two young kids that died, but, he talked about friendships, how embarrassed he was when he came home and wasn't playing football, even to admit that his buddies, that he wasn't in college pursuing his NFL dream, that he was at home. Some of the friendships really helped spark and regenerate his career in football, it sounded like, as well.
Yeah, and you mentioned Anthony Lighton, who played, to your point, I believe at Florida State and Penn State, and then the other young man who passed away in the crash, Isaiah Hazel. I know he recently played at Charlotte. I saw a story in the Charlotte Observer kind of about just his personality and engaging kind of makeup. And yeah, I mean, I can't imagine, it was so interesting for that story that I wrote. I talked to DeLon Parrish, who was their high school coach at Wise High School in Maryland. And he said to me, like they had so much talent on that football team that Khyree was often kind of like overlooked in some capacity. I think part of it was from a grades perspective. I mean, his mom even admitted to me, like, he was a really sharp kid, just at times it just was not his priority. But DeLon Parrish, the high school coach, would say, like, he would always try to tell college coaches to look at this Khyree kid who, again, at the time was a receiver, and you can imagine a 6'4" wide receiver and that amount of athleticism being intriguing. So, yeah, I mean, I would say you're exactly right, Nordo, I'm sure, in that Khyree, when he goes home and there were a bunch of high school teammates starring at the Division I stage, that he knew in his own right. And it was another theme in terms of all the reporting I did for that feature story. Like everybody was like, he always had a belief that bordered, I think, at times with cornerbacks, it has to, on like, he knows he's the man. And I mean, if you talk to Dan Lanning, whom I did for that story, who's the coach at Oregon and who is as high-end a defensive mind and high-end of college football coach as they come right now, he was like, there are very few cornerbacks in my entire career that I've been around who have the talent that he has. He said to me, if you are creating a cornerback in Madden, Khyree Jackson is what you would create for your player, because it is, I mean, he is that level of talent. So, yeah, it's just, I mean, to go back through and read just some of the reporting I did, it it's so tough not to think about what would have been possible for a guy who, like I said at the top, kind of just navigated so much and really, clawed his way to get to the level at which he did.
Alec, do you sense in any way the Vikings took a flyer on Khyree Jackson with that 4th round pick?
No, I mean, I think they looked at their cornerback room and they thought that they needed high end talent. I think that's what they thought Khyree Jackson could be. There were multiple people for that story. Like, this guy's Pro Bowl talent. He shouldn't have fallen past the first, second round. It happens it happens because, these prospects are evaluated pretty heavily. But no, I don't think it was a flyer. I talked to a Vikings coach Saturday morning who said they had texted him the day before about special teams work that they expected him to be doing. I think for training camp, there were a lot of staffers looking forward to seeing what he would do against some of the Vikings elite receivers. So no, I think they believed with their ability to surround players and develop them in a way that, as all the NFLPA report cards have shown the last couple of years, and in the most optimal way that they could maximize a guy who had the potential that you rarely can find in that 4th round.
Alec Lewis, The Athletic, at Alec_Lewis, to follow him via Twitter, as a 9 to Noon does. And we are discussing and mourning the death of 24-year-old rookie corner Khyree Jackson.
And you can border on almost belaboring the point, I think, in some ways, Alec, but really speaking of the fact that didn't feel like they were taking a flyer on him, he enters an organization that really was the land of opportunity. So when you think about the sadness of life being lost and what's being taken away, and you go back through the story of from A to Z in terms of how he got here, he was entering a situation where he was truly going to have, meritocracy as it is, an opportunity to play, and early as well.
That's exactly right. And I also think the Vikings have been very particular and specific in terms of adding, a player like Shaq Griffin, who is a free agent cornerback that has not generated a lot of buzz. There have been a couple Vikings players who have just lauded the leadership and kind of like the command of the room that he has. So I think Josh Metellus told me it reminds me, Shaq Griffin coming in reminds me of when Patrick Peterson arrived. And so I think the hope from the Vikings perspective is you surround the young players with people to look up to and to kind of work alongside. You think about Harrison Smith in that role and what it means to watch how they interact, to watch how they manage their body. That is a intentional, I think, thing in terms of this Vikings team wanting to develop players. And so in Khyree Jackson's situation, exactly your point, Nordo, it's like when you have a guy with this much potential talent, to be able to put him in a situation both where there is unlimited opportunity, but also people to watch and to observe and to learn from. It's also part of, again, it's so tough because it was just such a short amount of time. And you could feel it in, sometimes statements from the team but you could just feel from Kevin O'Connell to Kwesi Adofo-Mensah to ownership with Marcus Ziggy-Wilf to, again, one of the staffers I talked to said to me, they after they were told, it was like, I can't sit with this. It hit really hard inside that building because I think they wanted the best for this dude and believed that the best was there, could be out there.
You know as well as anybody, it's such an insulated, it's such a unique, insulated professional environment. Now this is the off season, but guys get close quickly. And Khyree was with them for around a couple of months. So I would imagine, with a training camp on the horizon, when, or just texting or talking to people, when you start filtering back into action, chatting with like Josh Metellus or Cam Bynum or some other people who just really feel life and got to know this young man. They get close quickly, man. So that there are some grieving right now, right?
Yeah, without question. I mean, I've even thought about like the Dwight McGlothern, the undrafted rookie cornerback, who I'm sure like Khyree was his guy. They probably sat next to him in the room. They probably hung out off the field. They're the same age. They're in the same spot. And now that void just exists. I mean, it is, yeah, it's just so tragic. And again, like you obviously my mind first goes to the mother who said to me how proud she was of her son 3 months ago and proud of the opportunity. And that just sat with me, and it's hard to sit with. And then it goes to his father, Raymond, and then it goes to the families of the other two men lost in the crash. But there's no doubt that, Kevin O'Connell tweeted heartbroken, and he doesn't tweet. It's not something he doesn't need to have a personality, a brand on Twitter. He doesn't need social media. He commands the room as good as anybody, and the people in the building know what he stands for. But I think, to me, that was a pretty clear reflection of like how much it hit a guy who has young kids himself. And it's just an unfathomable situation.
So in terms of that process, and it's so impossible to really predict, but I am interested to see how the team, how they continue to grieve, how they work through this situation, the emotional aspects of it, and ultimately still having to lead a professional life. You know what I mean? These relationships that are built in such short order, as you just well put, it's really, it hits you so hard. You got to carry that burden and then continue to move forward. It's impossible to predict, as I said, but I am interested to see how the grieving and that process continues for the team.
Yeah, and I would say, just as to hearing you guys talk about it, it's interesting. Like the NFL is just a massive business, and I think oftentimes it is such a transactional one where you are focused on roster construction and camp battles and the thing, and PA, you know this because we've had these conversations with the mic, but it's like these are people and human beings with families and a lot going on. So it really hits you. But I Nordo, you're exactly right. I think the one thing that just knowing this team, feeling like I know this team pretty well, is like the Josh Metellises, the Cam Bynums, the Harrison Smiths. These are I'm pretty blown away pretty frequently. People ask me all the time, like who is a tough guy to talk to in the locker room, and there are. Those three guys I just mentioned, a ton more on that defensive side, are as rock solid of people, just from the time I've spent with them, that I just think, to have those types of voices and those types of just characters in the building to kind of chart through a process like this, I think is an unspoken, just absolute blessing, really.
How close was Khyree Jackson to actually playing NBA 2K tournaments for a living? I understand he was quite good and he would do quite well in tournaments and actually make money, but like how close was he to making that a career?
Yeah, I think it was kind of he got on a bit of a 2K bender and in some capacity, and his mom would say that, like, I would hear the video game through the TV. She's probably hearing Kevin Harlan's voice just booming through their household, and it's as good of a voice as you could probably hear in your household. And I think she asked Khyree, like, are you gonna at some point, like, why you keep playing this video game? And he's like, well, I want to go pro. And for that story that I reported, I sent a couple of emails to like some 2K GM. It's not really my specialty of a situation, but I think there was like the GM of the Miami Heat 2K team said to me, like, I remember this guy playing tournaments and being competitive. But I think it's more of, to me, like, how close was he? Probably not close to actually trying to be a professional 2K player. I think it's more of a reflection of the confidence he had that he could do something that he enjoyed and set his mind to. Like, that is, I think that the cornerback confidence with him, you could see it in his first 15-minute conversation with us, just the belief in himself. And you can't imagine if you're able to withstand 3 junior colleges. His mom said that when they moved him into Fort Scott Community College in Kansas, I mean, they stepped in the room. I think there was like mold on the wall. She had to go get cleaning supplies. It was terrible. I mean, if you can emerge from those types of environments and play at Alabama, which is, I mean, it holds you to the standard. I asked his mom, like, why Alabama? And she's like, well, he knew Terrion Arnold and Kool-Aid McKinstry were going to be there, and he thought he could be the best. And how else to test that than against those guys? And so I think more than anything, to me, the 2K experience is just and that being an aspect of the story is a reflection of just the belief he had in himself.
And lastly, one of his coaches shared this, and it was near the bottom of the story, where paraphrasing, he was like, if Khyree Jackson trusts you, he'll run through that proverbial wall for you. It was trusting people a problem for this young man?
Well, I think Joey Thomas, who was the former NFL cornerback who coached him at Fort Scott, said that to me. Because, I mean, you know, through the reporting of the story, you want to get all sides of things, all aspects. And I think more than trust, I think there were places along his path where he did not have the personal connection to people or to coaches that he preferred. Like Alabama there's a certain type of person that is built for that was built for that program when Nick Saban operated. I would think of it in the Belichick vein of it's not really about you, it's about team. And so I think when you don't sometimes have those personal relationships with your coaches, in this day and age specifically, it can kind of intersect with how you approach, how you live your daily life. So I think Joey Thomas's comment to me of saying like it's kind of on the Vikings staff to build that trust was more of like he wants to be pushed, he wants to have an arm alongside him, he wants to feel like you believe in him. And I mean it's a relatable thing. It's like I think oftentimes about the people that push me, and then you need people to come alongside you. So I think that was the comment. It was really a reflection of what coaching is in this day and age. It's become less about demand without any loving, any personal connection, and more about the personal. I'm on your side, I support you type of feel.
I know you're out of state, and thank you very much for the time, specifically the elongated marathon-related segment, and I look forward to seeing you when you get back, okay?
Thanks, PA. Appreciate you having me, and like I said kind of at the top, I just thoughts are with his family, the family of Isaiah Hazel and Anthony Lightnight. It's brutal, but looking forward to seeing you when I'm back, and you and Nordo. Thank you, PA.
Thank you, bud. Alec Lewis at Alec_Lewis via Twitter, covers the Vikings and writes about football for The Athletic and TheAthletic.com and Indeed. May God rest the souls of all three who perished in that three-car accident in Maryland, which included Minnesota Vikings rookie cornerback, 24-year-old Khyree Jackson. TimberTech and TimberTech.com. Thank you very much for the What's on Deck portion of the equation. And around the corner, some Vikes Bites. Then Howard Cross, tight end immortality for the New York Giants. He'll join us about 20 minutes from now. Meanwhile, the cash thing has returned, and here it is. Good morning.
The Fan and BigDeck.com do want to give you a chance to put $1,000 in your hand with the National Cash Contest. Go to KFAN.com and enter the keyword Bills. You might win $1,000 with the keyword Bills at KFAN.com.
Bites.
All righty. Vikes Bites at 9:32. Howard Cross with the New York Giants radio network. 15-ish minutes from now. Glenn Perkins, former closer for the Minnesota Twins. Perk at Play will join us about 11 o'clock to chat about the Minnesota Twins and much more. But here's Mad Producer.
Yeah, Vikes Bites. And Vikes Bites is brought to you by Thousand Hills Lifetime Grazed Grass-Fed Beef. Thousand Hills, by the way, it's a Minnesota company supporting local, and they support Dinkytown Athletics as well. So keeping local athletes home with a local grass-fed beef product. Check them out, thousandhillslifetimegrazed.com. Kind of tough to make a transition from last segment when we're talking about the Vikings PA. Thanks again to Alec Lewis of The Athletic for joining us and talking about sharing his connection and although limited, but his contact with the family of Khyree Jackson, post-draft piece that he wrote and kind of giving us some insight into who he was as a member of the Minnesota Vikings drafted just a couple of months ago and passes away alongside a couple of his teammates, Isaiah Hazel and Anthony Litton in Maryland. Still learning more. Charges have been pending. That's the latest news that I have in regard to 23-year-old Corey Klingman of Upper Marlboro, Maryland, who appears to be the cause of that crash. So making that transition piece as difficult as it is with the Minnesota Vikings and looking ahead to training camp PA, I was listening to the Power Trip show this morning, and I heard Meat Sauce, Paul Lambert, talking about Sam Darnold and the prospect of him playing and how much he may be playing in preseason games as training camp kicks off just a few weeks from now, ultimately playing preseason games. And my question is actually not necessarily what you see in terms of, because I think he would be more likely to throw in the preseason given the unique situation of the quarterback spot than in years past with Kirk Cousins being the starter and not getting a lick outside of joint practices. But how favored is the idea of keeping three quarterbacks on the roster into the season? So you got Darnold, you got J.J. McCarthy, but then you also have Nick Mullins, second-year cat out of BYU, Jaron Hall, actually like 4 or 5 years older than J.J. McCarthy, so kind of wrapping my head around that. But the idea of keeping three into the season, are you protecting J.J. McCarthy against a Darnold injury? Are you willing to develop him as long as you can, but ultimately he's the number 2 guy? Have you kind of allowed that to bounce around in your head at all as you picture this thing unfolding? A
terrific question, and I like how you said how favored is the Vikings keeping three quarterbacks, because without steam, I would make it prohibitively favored in that it would be Sam Darnold starting, Nick Mullins as the backup, and then J.J. McCarthy as the third quarterback. Now, what's next for Jaron Hall? I have absolutely no idea. Obviously, if you put McCarthy on the practice squad, then that ain't going to work because you'll lose him. But would they? This is an opportunity for McCarthy. In puncher's chance would be too strong, but long-ish shot fashion to win the 2 job in training camp. And I don't necessarily know if it's going to happen, but I would make 3 quarterbacks on the active roster prohibitively favored.
Vikes Bites, brought to you by Thousand Hills Lifetime Grazed Grass-Fed Beef. We love lists in the summertime, and I saw this via ESPN. Running backs in the NFL, ranking them. The top 10, in fact. McCaffrey into Breece Hall, Nick Chubb, oh my. Then it's Saquon Barkley, Jonathan Taylor, Bijan, second year down in Atlanta, followed by Josh Jacobs, just ahead of Jahmyr Gibbs. King Henry still making it happen. Good spot for him to fall in Baltimore. And then Travis Etienne down in Jacksonville. That's the top 10. Now, an honorable mention, they put Aaron Jones.
Oh, with that, AJ.
And they said Jones finished the 2023 season with 5 consecutive 100-yard games through the regular season and playoffs. Lost a tight battle with Etienne for the 10th spot. According to an NFC defensive coach, Green Bay's offense was completely different when he was healthy. And that's kind of, I think that deserves merit in the conversation with Jordan Love. That as we saw Jordan Love truly start to take off a year ago, that was kind of in line with the health of Aaron Jones and the effective running game that they deployed over there in Packers land. He's a difference maker was the final quote of that NFC defensive coach. Fair assessment of Aaron Jones. Should he be in the top 10? And how excited are you to see him with pads on in purple and gold?
Well, they teams and or players to a certain extent live in search of metaphorical or symbolic chips on the shoulder. And here is one. I mean, what? Not talking who? Him? Really? I'm faster than him. I cut better than him. I catch better than him. I've done better in certain spots than him. So that's there. But, really, until the Vikings, and this is if, but until and or if the running portion of the equation is different than, say, it was last year. See, I didn't really have as much a problem with it in 2022 as some other people did. I thought Dalvin was quite effective. I saw what would happen off the play action with the safeties and the linebackers, and that's what you look to get accomplished.
Not to interrupt you there, too, but Dalvin was 6th in the NFL in rushing that year. Wow. Still at 1,200 yards. And I know, instantly he leaves, and it's, Dalvin fell off, and the running game in totality statistically was not great, 29th in the league.
Mm-hmm.
Dalvin certainly has declined. There's no doubt about that. But in 2022, I'm glad you brought that up, because Dalvin was so pivotal, and really at that stage of his life with the Vikings, it was all about the home runs, right? And what we were missing with the lack of home runs, lack of overall explosion in the running game a year ago. So the thing needs to change, but I'm totally with you. 2022, at least from Dalvin's standpoint, I liked it a lot.
Well, the play action part of the offense is something that doesn't get mentioned enough when people analyze running games, and the potency or lack thereof, or at least the perception thereof. So, like last year, and we chatted it out a little bit into the season, and then I think it came to fruition. It's when they went play action to Madison, nobody was budging, and that was a problem. That was a problem through which they had to work. Then they lost their best quarterback. Then they got a running quarterback. Then they got a rookie. Then they got a veteran. So a lot of things went kaput because of the 4-quarterback trick. But when you would watch things back and they would do play action to Alexander Madison, I mean, it's not like it didn't work every time. It's not like a safety or a linebacker didn't take a step or a couple of steps thinking it's actually going to be a run. But Alex he's just not as fast as Dalvin. He's just not as fast or shifty as Aaron Jones. I mean, Madison would catch the football and do okay with it, specifically on like smoke screens, like when he scored against New Orleans at Tottenham Hotspur. Jones is swing guy, screen guy, wheel route guy, angle route guy, bust loose from the seam and try to stroke the post with him. Even though that's not done much, you can still do things with him that I think are going to open the running game, simply because he's the greatest threat you've had here in a couple of years.
Vikes Bites, final nugget for you here. My question to you is, Brian Flores deployed a ton of press coverage when he was running things down in Miami. That changed significantly into last year, where I think the Vikings were bottom 10, maybe even closer to the bottom of the barrel than that in terms of press coverage. The focus on bringing in Jonathan Grenard, you get Dallas Turner with the trade up in the first round. Is there an aspect of this, if we're trying to sift through tea leaves with the Vikings defense, that maybe Brian Flores in the long play would like to get back to deploying more man coverage if he can get more thrust up front? Yeah,
I wholeheartedly would agree with that. And it does go hand in hand with the pass rush. Now Shaq Griffin's a press corner. I mean, that's Shaquille Griffin is a press man corner. Now, he's in the second half of his career, but that's like Patrick Peterson back in the day when he was a 4-2 guy returning punts for touchdowns. He was unbelievable at press coverage because he's strong, his upper body's strong, his arms are long, and if he gets beat, he can recover quickly. And I guess Griffin would be in that fishbowl just under a different rock. But it has to go hand in hand with the pass rush. And when the previous coordinator was here a couple of years ago, and at the end of the season was relieved of his duties,
Donatel, yeah,
that was a problem with the analysis that I always had. Was you would get people, whether it's fans, media members, or whomever, would be like, we never blitz. They have to blitz. They have to find ways to get pressure by sending extra people. on the other side of it, I think if you got Donatel to open a vein publicly, which he's not this kind of guy, so he ain't going to say this, but he would have a right to say, you really want me to leave these guys on islands? I mean, it's fair, because when they did, the guys got beat. Cam Dantzler got beat, and so on. So it is a hand-in-hand situation, and I believe at the crux of who he is, having corners who can play man and keep up with guys, that only opens things for the 3-4 hybrid with the floaters. Those are Vikes Bites provided by
Thousand Hills Lifetime Grazed Grass-Fed Beef.
I had a chance a few weeks ago to meet Howard Cross, a longtime tight end for the New York Giants, Super Bowl winner too. Beat the Buffalo Bills when Norwood missed that kick. And Howard's going to join us around the corner to lighten the mood a little bit and chat about the New York Giants. They're first on the schedule for the Vikings when the regular season begins, and that'll take place next on KFAN.
Hardcore football.
Hey, Howard Cross, it's Paul Allen. Good to chat with you again. How are you?
Pretty good, Paul. What's happening?
Right on, man. Howard, 13-year tight end for the New York Giants. He won Super Bowl 25 versus Buffalo, and among other assorted duties with Giants.com and Big Blue, he's the New York Giants radio network sideline reporter. And the Vikings open at MetLife Stadium against the New York Giants, first game of the season. Now, Howard, I mentioned that you won Super Bowl 25 versus Buffalo when Norwood went winding up for that kick. Like, what does that feel like? You're leading by 1 point. It's a hittable field goal. How do you happen to remember your level of anxiety at that moment?
Yeah, but not the way that people would think. Today kickers are out easily kicking 50 plus yard field goals. Back then, it wasn't the same thing, and especially I think at 47 or 44. On grass, he was struggling. So the big objective for the defense was to keep him outside of his range, and they had just kept him just a few yards outside of his range, and his percentage dropped way down off the grass. So, as a team and scouting reports and everything, we all knew that.
How your son, Howard Cross III, a defensive lineman, a nose tackle at Notre Dame, who most likely or absolutely will get drafted in the 2024 draft. How's his collegiate football career coming together?
He's done a good job, with the way things work out in college. He stuck with it. He stayed at Notre Dame. Very proud of him because he's already finished his master's, and he's just taking care of his COVID year. He's progressed steadily every year he's been there. I think not last year, but the year before was his first year starting. I think he missed 2 or 3 games with a sore. Well, I think he didn't miss any games, but he should have missed 2 or 3 games with a sore ankle. Played through that season, and then last season was his best season. I think he had 66 or 68 tackles, a bunch of quarterback pressures. He was just all over the field constantly. And in order for him to finish his master's, he thought it best to try to go back because he didn't know when he got drafted if he would ever go back to finish. I'm like, well, that's on you. You're an adult. And he chose to, get his master's degree finished, and now he'll, play his final season, enjoy, the fruits of his labor, hopefully, and hopefully even have a better season this year than he did last year. He's going to be stronger, smarter, faster about the game.
Is your son a true nose tackle, or is he a 3 technique, or both?
I think in the NFL he'll probably be a 3 technique. I think that kids, with players with that kind of speed, explosiveness, and disruption, those incredibly fast first few steps. Those are the guys that you want to put in that slot between the guard and the guard and the tackle sometimes, but mostly the guard and the center, and give guards a hard time because having a guy that's really quick that can squeeze through gaps in that position is really tough, not just for the offensive line, but it's tough for the quarterback. It's hard to run power plays and pull people when this guy's either following your player that's pulling through the hole, or you're trying to pull through the hole and he's already 2 steps in the backfield and you can't get over to your block. Oh,
you mean like Dexter Lawrence of the New York Giants, right?
Yeah, but not quite as big.
Well, I mean, but for son, he watches film, obviously, to get ready for offensive lines and offenses, but do you ever have him, does he ever watch Dexter Lawrence tape or like Aaron Donald tape or, some of the three techniques that are really good in the NFL?
Yeah, I tell him to watch a lot of the guys, watch guys closer to his height and size and speed, so he can understand what they're doing to play that three technique. And he's done it. He's been paying attention to them over and over, and he's starting to get the idea that he goes, well, I can do that. I'm like, okay, that's great. I understand, but, you have to watch it. This is not ESPN highlights. These guys are doing this constantly all the time. So, think about technique more than anything else. You already have the speed and the strength. Always think about your technique. Always be working it, even when you're in bed sleeping, be working your technique. And I think that helped him a lot.
And Howard, you're an Alabama native and played for the Alabama Crimson Tide. And getting to know you a little better, I know you're very prideful of Alabama football. And
Roll Tide.
Yep, Roll Tide. The Minnesota Vikings had a 24-year-old corner who played at Alabama a couple of years ago. Yep. In that national championship game against Georgia that season. And Khyree Jackson, he was killed over the weekend in a 3-car cat crash in Maryland. And I mean, holy cow, man, just what an awful, terrible story, right?
It's really sad. I think it's more unexpected. Even though it's something like that happens, I think even when I was in college, I had a classmate or a teammate who went home for one weekend. We usually rode together every weekend, and the one weekend we didn't ride together back and forth home, he was in a car accident and died. So I know the shock and the trauma of having someone young that and I know the fans are kind of like in awe, but his teammates and his family, and knowing someone that was so young and had so much life to live, and not their fault that something happens, and it's over so quickly, but we have to live our lives the best way we can and try to live them to the fullest as we can, because I tell my kids all the time, no one knows what's going to happen tomorrow, and tomorrow's not promised. So try to do the best you can with what you got.
Amen with that. Howard Cross, 13-year tight end for the New York Giants, Super Bowl winner, part of the Giants radio network. And speaking of Roll Tide, Dallas Turner is the favorite to win Defensive Rookie of the Year. That doesn't mean he's going to win it, but you know more about Dallas Turner and what he did in big spots at Alabama than we do. What do you think the Vikings got in Dallas Turner?
Think Will Anderson the year before going to the Texans, and you see what Dallas Turner is kind of the same person, but not like Will. He has more bend in his body, so when he gets to that edge, he can lean in and make that play. He's really strong against the run. For a guy that's built like he is, you would think that, he may get pushed around. He has incredible leverage and great hands. Relentless player. He understands the drive to try to, quote-unquote, finish and complete plays. I like it, not just his motor, but his football IQ. He's going to be a special player for you guys for a long time.
And this kicker, Will Reichert, all-time leading scorer in the history of FBS, very unassuming young man, very quiet young man. Not the biggest leg in the world, but big and accurate. What do you remember about him?
I remember that it's funny that he's the highest scoring player in college football, right? Because Alabama was usually blowing people out. They were knocking, they weren't kicking many field goals, but he had enough opportunities. I guess he kicked enough extra points to be the leading scorer. But the thing I know about him, he's really consistent. He never looks like he's rattled. He goes back to the old days of the old kickers back in the 70s and 80s, and they kind of walk out almost like he just put a cigarette out and then he walked out and kicked a field goal and goes back to the sideline. He's going to be great for Minnesota, especially since you guys play indoors. So having at least half of your games from time to time being indoors, when you need that big kick, he's going to deliver, because the kid's pretty automatic.
How did you handle or react to, because fans with Saquon Barkley? I mean, okay, he leaves, so some people are like, all right, he's washed up. Okay, that sucks. But then he goes to the Eagles, and reactions are going to be different given that rivalry. How about you when Saquon went to the Eagles? How did you feel?
Well, I thought the year before when they were trying to get Saquon signed and he chose not to sign, I thought that was a mistake on his part if he wanted to stay a Giant, because at that point I don't think he realized what the market was going to be, and they were offering him money before the market started. The following year, he's unfortunately now they can see the market and where running backs are being paid and how they're being paid, and running backs are getting together and complaining as a group that, hey, look, we're not getting what we want. But by this time, you've kind of missed your moment to get your payday. So I understood the whole process of where he was and what his agent was thinking when he leaves and the Eagles pick him up so quickly. I'm just thinking like, hey, look, I'm just happy he got paid, because it's a tough market for running backs. I mean, and people are going to say, the fans are going to be like, oh, I can't believe he did that. And some fans will say, oh, he's washed up. But at the end of the day, I don't care whose job it is. If you can get a raise to go somewhere else, even to a competitor, you're going to take the raise, because you don't know how long you're going to have this job, and you need the job to get by. And football is very, very, very short-lived, and there's definitely an expiration date on it.
Last one, my man. Appreciate the time. Malik Neighbors. We don't have the armor on yet. We don't have shoulder pads. They're not in the full outfit. But from what you've seen, super fast. Like, what do you think about Malik Neighbors?
When you watch kids like that, he harkens back to like the other great LSU receivers, Jefferson, the Chase, Odell Beckham. He's just another one of those guys. I think it seems like LSU is becoming receiver U right now. It used to be DBU, now it's kind of becoming receiver U. You get a kid that runs incredibly nice routes. You saw it in college. He does have the speed. He can blow by you, but he's a technician as well. He has great hands, a great catcher of the ball with his hands, not a body catcher, which means that if balls are outside of his framework of his body, he's going to be able to make those catches. That's what you also want to see in a receiver. Not afraid of a little contact, a little more contact in college than there's going to be in the NFL, because you can't really go after and hit guys that they used to. So I think that's going to even raise his boldness in the running routes and catching balls. And if the quarterback has time and can get it to him, you've got to tackle him. It's not like a push down. He's a sturdy kid. He's got good hands, good feet, and he's got nice legs. So when you hit him, you got to wrap him up and bring him down. So I'm looking forward to seeing him play. I think he's a weapon that the Giants haven't seen since Odell Beckham. I mean, they've had some decent receivers, but no one has really gone over 1,000 yards since Odell. And I think that this kid right here may go for 1,000 yards in his first season if they can get the ball to him.
Bounce back season for the Giants, or still, like on the comeback trail?
I think a little bit of both. I think the biggest thing for the Giants is, first and foremost, they have to have a healthy offensive line. Playing this season last year with, like, the first game of the season, yes, they got beat up pretty bad by Dallas, but all of a sudden your left tackle, your all-pro player, is limping. Then your right tackle starts limping by the end of that game. The next game, 2 more guys go out. You just can't, hope to have that. You can have 1 or 2 backups, but backups are backups for a reason. You don't want them to play extended time. And by the end of the season, I think they had, I think the starting 5 never came back on the field again. I think maybe 2 of them made it back on by the end of the season. So it was a rough year for them physically with all the bangs and bruises. If they can keep those guys healthy, they can have a bounce back season. But they do play, the AFC North, and playing against Pittsburgh and all those guys. Those are great defenses and some pretty good quarterbacks too. So being able to, you got to be able to hold your own from an offensive standpoint, and that means hold your own up front. If those guys up front can hold their own, the Giants can have a pretty good season. If they can't, Daniel Jones and company are going to have a hard time.
Much respect for your career, decade plus, and your work on the radio. Really happy I met you. Let's stay in touch and have a wonderful summer, okay?
Hey, you too. Have a great one.
Yep, see you, bud. Howard Cross. Howard Cross, former longtime tight end for the New York Giants. He bookended Mark Bavaro for a season or 2 before Bavaro left, and I think he went to Cleveland, Mark Bavaro. But they had that prototypical Bavaro had some kittle to him. He just wasn't as fast, but you could block with him. You could run him down the field and he'd catch it. And his pass protection was pretty good. And Howard Cross, that was straight run blocking, pass protecting, extra offensive lineman, tight end. Made a very nice career for himself in the NFL for 13 years. And we thank him for amplifying and joining 9 to noon. Into the second hour, we have a Viking segment coming up around the corner regarding some key games yours truly has been thinking about for a little bit. And that's next on KFAN.